Okay, a little follow-up to the arkanoid support. Previously, we did the video on the NES. There's the Super NES. Same game, completely different concept. The NES controller had finite sides. You could go all the way right, all the way left. You can't go any further. It's not a spinner. It's a dial. You can associate that with any term that you want. That's what I like to use. Very similar to a controller, there's a wall. So mapping a controller to the dial was rather simple in the sense of the physical aspect of it. The NES, the Super NES didn't work that way. The technology out there that was available was completely different because we had mice. And they figured, well, hey, that's a simpler approach. And I guess they figured that was an easy way to play the game. The thing with a mouse is it does not have a wall. Now, obviously, you have the edge of your table, but the amount that you move a mouse is pretty significant into the game. You move that mouse an inch, it's going to move pretty far in the game. So the concept was there's really no boundaries. If you had to, you could always pick the mouse up, put it back down on the table, and then continue to move it to the right. The same concept is with a spinner. Like on the arcade, they use the same method. So basically what's going on with the SNES is measuring how much you move and then trying to replicate that on the game in just the pixels or however you want to relate it, depending on the resolution. So that's not going to work very well with a controller, because if you go to the right, you can't move. If you haven't hit the wall in the game, you're stuck in the middle of the game and you cannot play. So to get around that, what we did is, same concept is the game is going to move the amount that you move, but if you reach the wall, it's going to go as fast as it can towards the wall to compensate for that missing degree. So here's a kind of the demo with the controller. It's actually pretty playable. I find it hard to be able to use a thumb to play this game in general. In the same way that the NES was working, it's pretty much feels the same with this SNES. The only time you're going to notice a difference is when it gets closer to the edge of the controller. I'll try to explain that here. If I hold right real quick, you saw that it would move. It's not going to instantly go to the edge like it would with the NES version. But pretty playable in this sense. Now what we'll go ahead and do is I'll switch out and we'll use the arkanoid controller. Also, this controller, the NES had two buttons. The action button and the pause button, or the secondary button. You can hit the pause to get that secondary button. A would be your shoot or your play game button, the action. That's not available on the arkanoid controller, if you recall. So if I unplug the controller, it's going to unpause the game. Probably better to go ahead and unplug that before you're ready, but anyways. Okay, so back to the game. Get this in view here. Now we have the old arkanoid controller, so you can actually use that on this game. It's pretty much going to feel the same way, but the same thing is true. If I wanted to go all the way to the right, it's going to take a little bit longer to get there than it would the NES, because again, it's trying to monitor the distance that you move, not the actual absolute position, which my preference is a much better way to play the game, but they wanted to go with a mouse, and that's what you have. And this will work with Atari paddles, any controller with analog, and then you can actually use the D-pad too if you want, because the game of course supports that. If you wanted to pause this game, since you don't have that button, fortunately with the way the Bliss-Box works, you can just unplug the controller. So if I were to unplug that, as soon as it starts here, we'll do that. Game started, I unplugged the controller. It paused it for you. That's also going to be needed if you need to hit that start button somewhere else in the game. It's just a handy thing to know. You can always unplug the controller to initiate that pause button. But there we go. That's the SNES emulating the mouse via a controller or paddle.